A Midwest showdown for second in command. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. Midwesterners have cornered the market on presidential running mates. First, it was Ohio's J.D. Vance who got the nod to be former President Trump's VP nominee. Then this week, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz got the call to serve as Vice President Harris's running mate. Walz brings similar credentials to the race as Vance does: working class roots, partisan stances. They both neighbor crucial battleground states. Brian Rothenberg, was this geography that dictated these choices because of the importance of the upper Midwest to this election?
I think the vice president was always about geography, but it could have been from the West, it could have been from the Midwest, and it could have been from Pennsylvania because that is a key state. I think the Walz pick is an interesting pick. I mean, he is a salt of the earth kind of guy, football coach, spent 24 years in the military in the National Reserve Guards. He has a pretty plain-spoken way of talking, almost a Harry Truman-esque kind of way of speaking. Most exciting for me is that he's a middle-aged man with white hair and dresses in a rumpled way, so we're in.
He has, some white hair. He's lost quite a few of those hairs. Mike Dacus, do you think he would have been the running mate had not J.D. Vance been the running mate? Because it sort of counters J.D. Vance's Midwestern roots, working class, near a battleground state.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I don't know the thinking of Kamala Harris and the Democrats, but at the end of the day, look, the last time I was on the show about 2 months ago, if I would have said who's the governor of Minnesota, I think there'd be a lot of blank stares in the room. Maybe someone would have known. But at the end of the day, Mike, look, this appeased one group, and it's those voters in Michigan, because even the governor of Michigan said that they're in trouble with the voters of Michigan, the pro-Hamas, the pro-Palestinian voters of Michigan. And the clear answer would have been Shapiro in Pennsylvania. And look, Politics 101 tells you Shapiro's your nominee, but he was Jewish. Couldn't take him, unfortunately, for the Democrats.
He's also an East Coaster, Anna, so we would have had a West Coast person, San Francisco, at the top of the ticket. It's Pennsylvania, but it's Philadelphia, which is East Coast.
He's also a first-term governor, and he doesn't have foreign policy experience where Walz has that. He's got military experience where Shapiro doesn't. There were probably different calculations on why you pick Walz over Shapiro. And, there's also, we had Professor Devine on our show. He's written 2 books about VP picks, and he says statistically the idea that you pick somebody to bring a swing state like Pennsylvania doesn't work.
Walz does bring that. He won his district in 2016. He ran for re-election, and then Trump, won that district really big. So he showed Laura that he could split the vote, which Democrats have been trying to get back to since Donald Trump won in 2016.
I do think that Minnesota, though, in general, has sort of an independent streak. It may not be as partisan as other states. Remember, they elected Jesse Ventura as the governor. I think that Tim Walz is an interesting pick. I think that the Harris stepping up and Biden stepping aside has injected a lot of energy and enthusiasm among the Democrats, and now they have to rebuild that blue wall again and make sure they win key states like Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, etc.
Brian, will Kamala Harris regret not picking Josh Shapiro?
I don't think so. I mean, that's going to be a battleground state one way or another. I think Governor Walz is an interesting pick, even though he's not well known because of the way he handles himself, quite frankly. I mean, he kind of speaks off the cuff. He came up with that weird line, which might be the most effective line I've heard about Donald Trump. It doesn't offend Trump supporters, but at the same time, I mean, there are some weird things going on there. He's just a plain-spoken person that can relate to a lot of those folks. And I think as people get to know him better, from my time when I was in Michigan, I saw that. And as far as Michigan goes, it's already, flipped. The latest polls have Kamala Harris. I just saw Morning Consult, I think, had not only her up, but her up in every swing state right now.
So, Mike, I mean, it's been a rough, I want to say rough, but this momentum has swung a little bit back after Joe Biden left. Kamala Harris, the energy, a new candidate there. Now the VP pick, the convention's coming up in 2 weeks. How does Donald Trump and the Republican Party counteract that?
We'll keep doing what we're doing. Cost of gas hasn't gone down because Kamala's the nominee and Walz is the VP pick. The cost of our groceries at Kroger and Giant Eagle are getting more expensive, not less expensive. Can't afford a mortgage, can't afford a home. Nothing's changed for the lives of middle-class Americans, single moms. It's still bad out there. They can't afford anything. And that's what we're going to remind the voters. It doesn't matter who she picked or who the nominee is. It's hard to live in America under the Biden-Harris economy.
The unemployment rates are still historically low. GDP is higher than it was under Donald Trump. And the stock market, even though it's hit a bump, is still near record highs. Yes, the past week it has, but it's still at 38,000.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, when all of us go to the grocery store this weekend for our children and our families, look at your bill. And look what it was under Donald Trump. Completely different.
It is the groceries are 21% higher than they were when Biden took office, but it has slowed. Anyway, Midwesterners and their importance in this race, Laura, how much of importance does it have, and how is that reflected in these choices, do you think?
Well, I think that it was a geographic choice for both candidates to go with the Midwestern guys, but they didn't pick swing state people. I think a lot of it had to do with the chemistry of how they interacted with the top of the ticket.
Bottom line, 2 months from now, we're not voting for Tim Walz and J.D. Vance, probably, right, Anna?
No, and I think that's really important to keep in mind. Like, they get a lot of attention. Traditionally, conventional wisdom, and I really hate to use that in this election cycle, but the only thing that your VP candidate can do for you is hurt you. So as long as neither of them does something spectacularly stupid, I think at the end of the day, we're going to be voting for Harris or Trump.
Do you think these candidates park themselves in the Midwest, Brian?
Oh, I think they're going to be in all the swing states only, and we'll get to that when we talk about the Senate race, but I don't think we're going to see much of them here. Now, I did notice that Harris has been running some national buys, like on the Olympics, that are running in Ohio, and we didn't see that under Biden.
All right, the race for U.S. Senate is heating up as we enter the dog days of August. Republican challenger Bernie Moreno is traveling the state on his Defend America bus tour. Sherrod Brown continues to criticize Moreno's business practices as a car dealer. Both are running lots of TV ads during the Olympic coverage. And this week, Senator Brown told CNN he would not attend the Democratic National Convention later this month in Chicago. Since being elected senator, Brown has only missed one Democratic convention. That was in 2020. He said at the time it was because of COVID concerns. Laura Bischoff is not attending the Democratic convention, the big party for that party every 4 years, a sign that he wants nothing to do with Democrats. What's going on there, do you think?
I don't think it's that he wants nothing to do with Democrats. I think that he's in a tight race. There was an AARP Ohio poll that came out last week, I think, showed Brown up 4 points over Moreno. This is going to be a very tight race. And I think that, embracing Harris doesn't really serve him well. He wants to run his own race and maybe pick up some of those voters actually who might vote for Trump because he's seen as somebody who's pro-worker, and might vote for Sherrod Brown as well because he's also seen as somebody who's pro-worker.
Brian, I can see not accepting a speaking role at the convention, not a high-profile role, but why not just go even for a day or two?
Actually, a lot of the candidates aren't. Jackie Rosen isn't. I think the Senate candidate in Montana isn't. It's not.
Well, he's also in a tough race.
Yeah. But, in the case of Sherrod, he's been running his own race anyways, even with Biden not being here. So, it's not like he's going to be appearing with Biden. Biden's not going to be in the state. His whole goal is, as you had said, Laura, it's I've got to be able to peel off some of these voters that might vote for Trump and might vote for me, because that's happened in the past. And it will happen if he focuses on their issues and not on the party politics.
Mike, what do you think of the Olympics as live sports? Tends to get a lot of political ads because people will sit through the commercials. It's not on demand as much. Both candidates, what I saw, were running ads pretty heavily during the Olympics. The messaging is Moreno did some bad things as a business person, and Sherrod Brown's too close to Kamala Harris and liberal Democrats.
Yeah, it's Ohio. So I can't speak for the other 49 states, but in Ohio, that matters. Biden is severely unpopular. Sherrod Brown didn't even show up to East Palestine when Biden finally came to visit the unfortunate people that live there, what happened to them. But Mike, at the end of the day, he can separate himself geographically as much as he wants, but he voted 84% of the time with Kamala Harris when she was in Congress with him. That's going to be highlighted by Bernie and his team and other outside groups Look, at the end of the day, when Trump wins Ohio, which he's going to, is if it's anywhere between 8, 10, 11 points, it's statistically impossible for Sherrod to make that up. It just truly is. Bernie's in a great position. He's run a great campaign 7 days a week. He's going to win, I predict.
And Sherrod Brown, as Laura mentioned, he wants to run his own race. Can he really do that in a presidential year? Now, he ran in 2012 when Barack Obama was facing Mitt Romney, and it wasn't quite the same race as now, no Donald Trump. But can he run his own race?
Statistically, the odds are not on his side. So what I found really fascinating was, I think it was CNN's Manu Raju did this deep dive on how many times a U.S. Senate candidate has won in a state where the opposite party won the presidential election, right? So like Trump picks up Ohio, the Senate goes for Brown. There's only been one senator, one in the last several decades. It was Susan Collins, because Biden won and Susan Collins won. And so he would be the second senator, I think, in the last 50 or 60 years to pull this off. So it is very difficult. And I do agree with Mike. If Trump, for some reason, carried Ohio by 3, 4, 5, I could see Sherrod doing it. If Trump wins by 7, 8, 9, probably not.
So what is that gap, Brian, that we need?
You have to
or
remember
Sherrod
on a
Brown
gap,
needs?
when you're talking about blue-collar voter, and politics is numbers. It really is a numbers game. When you're talking about flipping a voter, similar to how Trump flipped blue-collar males in 2016, when you get one vote that was for Trump to move over to one vote for Brown, it's actually a swing of 2 votes when it comes to Bernie Moreno. So it is impactful, the fact that they have differences, and Bernie Moreno has a couple issues that are really going to be problematic for him. I mean, one of them is, just the business aspect of it. He's got a bit of that Romney-esque stuff. I think they're chasing him around with a big fat cat balloon right now.
It has a cigar.
Does it have a cigar? I didn't even see that. But it's you can't. He's so tied at the hip with Trump, and you don't know what Trump's going to do, and that's a problem.
Do you expect them to debate? I've heard that people are figuring out we're trying to organize debates, but they'll probably debate at least once, would you think, Laura, right?
That's the tradition. I haven't heard what the status is. Those debates require all kinds of backdoor negotiations over all the details. It's very arduous.
Does any candidate have anything to risk or gain more than the other? Should they debate? If the race is close, I guess they have to, right?
Well, given how Biden performed, I think anything that Kamala Harris does is gonna be. She's got a very low floor.
No, I mean Brown and Moreno.
Yeah. Oh, Brown and Moreno.
Yeah.
I don't know that traditionally they matter, other than if somebody makes a mistake.
Yeah. All right. Topic number 3. Based on the latest campaign filings, the group pushing the anti-gerrymandering amendment is out of money. In fact, it owes a little bit of money, but that does not mean it's in financial trouble. The group Citizens Not Politicians wants voters to allow an independent group to draw legislative maps that are now drawn by elected leaders. It has raised $23 million since January. It has spent about $24 million, including a lot of money on TV ads that have not run yet. And there are 3 months to go before Election Day. So why all of this advanced spending? Perhaps it's because of a new state law that bans foreign contributions to issue campaigns. A Swiss billionaire is known to be a donor of a group supporting redistricting reform, so his gifts could be illegal. But here's the catch. The law does not go into effect until August 31st. So until then, state law does not preclude such donations. Anastasia, complicated but shrewd, if it works out the way they think it is.
So the generous reading of the tea leaves here is that lots of campaigns make pre-buys. It is cheaper to buy fall ads in the summer than it is in the fall. I think we have close to $100 million in ads reserved for the Senate campaign, but from Moreno and Brown's camps. So it is not unusual, let's say, to buy a lot of ads now for later. But yes, getting all those ads purchased ahead of August 31st allows them to use, I think it's $6 million of that dollars came from the 1630 fund. That money, now we don't know how much of that is from the Swiss billionaire. We know that the 1630 fund gets money from them. So tracing all of that back would be part of that new law.
How uncommon is it for a campaign to drain its account in early August for a November election? Brian.
It is not uncommon, since I buy TV time. It is not uncommon to buy TV time when it's cheaper in the summer. That's actually a pretty shrewd move.
But to drain the account.
To drain the account, you better know where your next money is coming from. But having said that, this is like really gets away from the truth, which is they don't want to talk about redistricting. So there is a foundation. They have many different donors that give money to that foundation. It all goes into this one foundational account, and then they give out grants. It would be like saying that the $900,000 that they gave pro-life groups, that the Roman Catholic Church gave pro-life groups, was not, you'd have to prove that some of the money came from the Vatican banks necessarily, or where that money came from all the different people that gave the money. It's just, it's so sticky, and it's going to get to be a problem for both parties over time.
Mike, where does the money come for the opponents of this amendment? Where is that campaign?
I have no idea.
It doesn't have the, I mean, just realistically, it does not have the same passion behind it that your folks did when it came to trying to defeat the Reproductive Rights Amendment. Redistricting does not have the same passion behind it, the same organization behind it. Defending map making as it stands now is not a cause célèbre.
Yeah, well, I think there's going to be a lot of buyer remorse at the end of the day if this thing passes. I hope it does, and I'm going to vote no. And I'd love to talk about that if we get a chance. But look at Michigan. All you have to do is look at Michigan, I mean, and what's going on there. But we're not the same state. There's only so many ways, Mike, you can draw a map. And we had a bipartisan map that just passed that Allison Russo voted for it.
By two people.
Okay,
votes, yeah.
so the voters in 5-6 years ago, by 70% of the vote, not once but twice, changed it to the current system we have now. We had a statewide ballot initiative, and they both passed with 70% of the vote, and we had a bipartisan map. So there's no gerrymandering when you have a bipartisan map. That's what happened.
There is gerrymandering, but it's complicated.
Okay, so when Democrats and Republicans come together and vote unanimously on a map, that's gerrymandering?
Yes, because there was
Michael.
protected. Because Democrats benefit from gerrymandering as well because they run in safe districts.
Okay.
So there is an incentive for Democrats to pick a map. Yes.
So what's going to happen then? What just happened in Michigan? The federal court threw out the citizens map up there because it violated the civil rights. African American state reps and state senators are going to go away because you're going to have more Allison Russos in Upper Arlington and Beth Listons in Dublin because there's only so many ways to draw a map. Look, it just happened. Google.
They have plenty of minority candidates there.
They just threw out the maps. The federal court
threw
said
out
because they
because
violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
They threw
and it's
out
going to
one-
happen if you're
one
African American. You're not
district.
going to
Come
get
on.
elected
All right,
in
we'll let
Ohio.
Brian chime in, then we'll get to
Yeah, I mean, look, yes, the problem is going to be both sides are going to have much more competitive races. Who wins in the end in that? The people in Ohio win in the end in that because there aren't going to be these 60% Republican, 60% Democratic things. Will there be courts that come in and have to arbit some of these issues? They will. Are there minority seats and plenty of them in Michigan? There are plenty in the legislature in Michigan, plenty of minorities in Congress too. Both parties, by the way.
Now, in Michigan, for 30 years, Republicans had a supermajority in the legislature because they controlled the map making, but all of the statewide leaders were Democrats, traditionally. So, for the most part, over the course of the years.
John Engler would
Yes.
probably disagree
But
with you.
for the most part, Democrats dominated statewide races, but the Republicans had a supermajority in the legislature, from what I.
Till recent.
Yeah. So, bottom line, Laura, campaign finance. You can pass rules, but there's always a way around them.
Yes. It's interesting. You said that how many drain their account. It is a little unusual. However, the bulk of what you spend in a campaign is spent on TV. And, they've reserved $16.8 million in TV time that has yet to air. I think they'll continue to raise money. They'll find money to pay their staff and even, do out mailers, et cetera.
So how do you think an opposition campaign will take shape? And Mike DeWine came out against it last week. Matt Huffman, the Senate President's against it.
So is Rob McCauley, the heir apparent to be Senate President. There's a Keith Faber's against it, State Auditor, I believe Frank LaRose, Secretary of State. So I wonder who buys the ads for this.
What's interesting is everybody you're mentioning they're all incumbent Republicans. They're the ones who are going to be opposed to this. And I think that if we do see ads being purchased, I wonder if it's going to come from dark money groups that we don't really know who's behind them.
Just like Marie's doing with her 1630 fund. We don't know where the money's coming from. Jim Province wrote the article that you circulated. Money's from Virginia, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, Switzerland. So it's already happening. Look, the only way that I think without an infusion of cash to defeat this is for President Trump, J.D. Vance, to come out and publicly talk about this leading up to November. Yep.
All right. For the first time in history, Ohioans over the age of 21 can walk into a store and buy marijuana for no reason at all. No medical card required. Close to 100 dispensaries around the state opened their doors to adults this week. As marijuana for fun sales began, there were lines, but modest ones. Prices were a bit high, say those in the know, but that's likely due to supply constraints. Mike Gonidakis, you oppose this. It's early, but it seems to have gone off without a hitch, and the world continues to spin.
Yep.
Will it continue to spin a year from now, 10 years from now, when this legal marijuana is here?
Well, we'll have to see if these businesses go up in smoke or not, because we're learning that in Michigan.
Gummies are the key, though.
Yeah, because it's cheaper, apparently, according to the articles. It's cheaper to buy in Michigan, and I'm sure on the street it's still cheaper too. But look, the voters spoke. They want this, and I'm going to respect the decision of the voters of the state of Ohio. And now we have it. It's legal. I'm sure people 2 months ago were buying it, and they're buying it today too. But in the articles that we saw leading up to our show, that a lot of people were saying, hey, this is expensive, but it offsets driving to Michigan too, so, or anywhere else.
And Michigan was high and then came down. as
Down.
most
So,
states.
so we'll see. You know, I mean, it's a business, and you have to have customers. And you have to sell your product, just like any other business, and we'll see if it works.
Brian, you were in Michigan when this was legalized.
It's the same as I thought in Michigan. It's a big yawn. I mean, you know, at this point, people that are consumers of cannabis have been using it anyways, and so now it's legal, so they could go there and do it. Those people who are infrequent, like if you're not really a gambler, you might go to the casino once a year, you'll do it. Life goes on. I'm not sure many Ohioans even noticed, other than the fact that the media is doing articles about it, to be honest.
Yeah, there were no traffic jams outside the dispensaries, as other states have seen, years ago, I think, Laura.
Sure. Well, Ohio's a little late to the party on this, behind other states that adopted it earlier. There were some lines, nothing like, crazy free donuts or something like that kind of lines. A couple people, I think it was somebody in Cincinnati, slept in their car overnight so that they could be the first one in line. There was a celebratory air at these places.
State Rep Jamie Callender,
Very
Republican,
first purchase, yeah.
cut the ribbon at the place.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
That's great.
He was a supporter of legal marijuana. Hoped the legislature had done it before voters, but he was out first in line. Will state lawmakers do anything else, do you think, Anna, to try to change this law?
That is a hard one. So now that it's getting off the ground, I think they may be responsive if there are issues. I know Governor Mike DeWine has really wanted something more concrete around advertising, around smoking on streets. There's been a lot of conversation about Delta 8, which is diet weed, which gets sold at gas stations. The trouble, I think, for the most part, has been that they've tried to put all of that into a single piece of legislation. And breaking it apart may be the more realistic way to go piecemeal rather than to try and do all marijuana and Delta 8 all in one package.
Cigarette taxes, they go up a lot. Might we see marijuana taxes go up? It's 10% now, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think that the legislature will come to an agreement on that based on what the voters decided. But I agree with Hannah. I mean, we got to make sure it's not in our parks. We need to make sure it's not around our schools. We can do some things that are common sense and still respect the will of the voters. And I hope that's what the legislature does.
So we can have guns in parks and guns in schools, but we can't have. I mean,
No,
come
we
on.
can't have weed in our.
Then we
public
shouldn't have
parks.
guns either. I mean, this is a
We
little.
already have weed in schools and in parks.
Yeah.
It's
That's
just
unfortunate.
walk
We can
around
fix
and you
that.
can smell
Yeah.
it.
We can fix it.
Well, that gets to the point of local control. Some communities have said no sales in our community.
That's legal.
Will we see more of those, or will some of these communities say, you know what, this isn't that
You
bad?
did
And the next,
see, up in Michigan, you did see gradually more and more communities enact that for various different reasons.
what was the main motivation? Tax money?
I think it had to do with either tax money or they were opting out of it because of other issues that were more political on their councils.
Yeah, I just don't see the rich white suburbs embracing it. I'm not saying none of them have it, but I just don't think they'll embrace it. Look at New Albany just banned it. I don't think Les Wexner wants a pot shop next to his house, right? So I just don't see it in the suburbs. You'll see it in the big cities.
But is it any different than a liquor store at some point?
Someday, not now, maybe in the future.
They'll figure out how to tax it because we got a lot of stadiums to build. So.
Well, it wasn't. Well, it went on sale Tuesday. The tax holiday ended on Wednesday, but it wasn't affected by the sales tax holiday anyway.
These items were not eligible for the
Yes.
tax.
Anything,
Alcohol and tobacco.
anything that was bad for you
was not,
was not
allowed.
subject to the tax holiday.
Right.
And that's no fun. Anyway, our final off the record parting shots are up now, and Brian Rothenberg, you're up first.
You know, it's time for political consultants and as well as candidates to really, I know in the age of Trump you can say anything you want, but I heard a Republican candidate just say he was going to unleash a can of whoop-ass on his opponent. I don't know what whoop-ass is or what a can of it is, but it's enough. Let's talk about issues here.
Mike.
Yeah, this week, numerous school districts in Franklin County, Central Ohio, announced their cell phone policy, eliminating and severely restricting. Thank you to those school boards and those school administrators. It's the right thing to do. And I'm going to wag my finger at the school districts that are slow walking this, like Hilliard, where my daughter and son go. Every school needs to adopt this policy. These things lead to bullying, racism, and so many other problems with these kids.
Good. Anna.
So we are launching the 3rd season of Untangled. It starts Monday, August 26th, and it's going to be all about the redistricting amendment. And quick teaser, if you think right now is vicious, in 1842, the Whigs, because, you know, the Whig party that preceded the Republican Party, up and resigned from the legislature in mass to deny a quorum to stop the maps. So ours was bad, but it wasn't mass resignation bad.
And it's not a new debate. Laura.
I was just going to note that this weekend is the 50th anniversary of the resignation of Richard Nixon. I was remembering about how my mom made a special breakfast that morning of Eggs Benedict, so I knew it was big news.
It's Benedict. It's also the 30th anniversary of the Shawshank Redemption. And if you're a fan of that movie, you know it was filmed in Mansfield. If you haven't been to that prison, if you like the movie, definitely check it out. It might be a bit crowded this weekend with the celebration, but it's definitely worth the trip up there to see where that film was shot, and it's a great little tribute to northern Central Ohio. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Continue the conversation on Facebook. Watch us anytime at our website, wosu.org/COTR. We're also on YouTube and the PBS video app. For our crew and our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.